We now have Justin's reply, and a lot of people are still trying to figure out this 47.1 law. I know you've even looked more into it. It's new, but all of that relevant info that Justin's put out in the evidence and the context and her using sexy, et cetera, all can come to play. I mean, we have now evidence now where Ryan Reynolds is seemingly admits that his 7-year-old daughter was cast as kid pool. So here it is, guys.
Poor guy.
Our fight isn't with you.
When I want your opinion, I'll text Wolverine's your mouth.
That's kid.
Guiltily, that is my daughter,
I'm
Inez.
so sorry we have to admit that.
And I...
Saying, suck Wolverine's D off. And then the director's laughing. Yeah, she didn't even really want to do it, and we forced her to do it, and there were 400 versions of it. Many of us are watching that going like, my God, that's horrific, but sexy was the...
What if the entire narrative surrounding Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni wasn't what it seemed? While mainstream media pushed one storyline, the actual court documents, message logs, and legal transcripts point to something entirely different. In this eye-opening investigation, we dive into the untold side of a case that's shaking Hollywood from the inside out. Whispers from behind the scenes suggest that employment attorneys are quietly leaning toward Baldoni's version of events, with some even arguing that he might hold the stronger legal footing. And then there's Blake's curious behavior, her repeated absences from set, all while making time for not one, but 7 Taylor Swift concerts. For some insiders, that detail isn't just bad optics, it could be the key to unraveling a carefully constructed public image and flipping the case's momentum in a way no one expected.
So that Justin's put out in the evidence and the context and her using sexy, et cetera, all can come to play. I mean, we have now evidence now where Ryan Reynolds is seemingly admits that his 7-year-old daughter was cast as kid pool, saying, suck Wolverine's D off. And then the director's laughing. Yeah, she didn't even really want to do it, and we forced her to do it, and there were 400 versions of it. Many of us are watching that going like, my God, that's horrific, but sexy was the line for Blake? Can all of that come into play, and do you think...
I don't think it'll come into play at trial. I think there's not enough of a connection between what Blake and Baldoni and Blake were doing. I don't think it's enough of a connection versus what ended up being decided on another film between 2 other people, even though one of them is kind of related. I think the judge will say that's too prejudicial because the reaction you and I hear is that, well, what does that really have to do with what happened between Baldoni and Lively? That's my opinion. Judges are very guarded with regards to things that are too emotional for people to forget what they're really supposed to be concentrating on.
Fair enough, but her saying sexy to Justin earlier, absolutely connected and relatable.
Yeah, for sure.
Giving that's what's so weird, because even as Dina was saying it, I do feel like a set on a movie is a different employment. It's like, it's a different work. Like, I've been there. I worked on a set of a Playboy TV show as the caterer way back, and it was clear the rules were different on that show than others, right? Because there's people walking around without any clothing and stuff. Like, this industry is different than, say, a bank. So will the judge and jury be able to factor that into this claim?
Yes, if the lawyers bring out that narrative. Also, another thing, and I don't mean to open up this can of worms, but there's a lot of, if things are related to what's called the creative process, for instance, a comedian in a writer's room saying things that are offensive, but it's part of the creative process for the show, that is actually protected speech under the first.
What if the heartwarming family-first image of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds was less reality and more a masterclass in public relations? Beneath the viral Instagram moments, polished interviews, and feel-good parenting stories, insiders say, there's a much more calculated dynamic at play, one rooted not in sincerity, but in strategy. Sources close to multiple productions allege that the Lively-Reynolds duo may be using their roles as parents, not simply as loving caretakers, but as tools in a behind-the-scenes power game, while the world sees becoffs and bedtime routines. Those who've worked alongside them describe something differenta. Work environment where family status is reportedly leveraged to excuse production delays, last-minute changes, and even reworked contracts. As one industry source put it, they've turned parenthood into a negotiation tool, and they're scarily good at it. One particular exchange between Ryan Reynolds and Justin Baldoni adds fuel to this growing suspicion. After Baldoni reportedly sent a polite, straightforward inquiry, Reynolds replied, not with specifics, but with concerns about his children's health. To the untrained eye, it read like a caring father's update, but to those seasoned in Hollywood politics, it was viewed as a calculated move, framing any future disagreements as heartless attacks on a family man. A veteran producer called it textbook manipulation, not an update, but a setup, crafting a scenario in which any challenge could be spun as a lack of compassion. And the consequences of these moves weren't minor. Crew members, many paid by the hour, were repeatedly thrown into chaos as call times shifted or entire days were suddenly canceled. Unlike their A-list bosses, they couldn't rely on chefs, drivers, or nannies. They had rent to cover and families of their own, but no influence to counter the ripple effects of these celebrity whims. The strain became especially evident during the turbulent Las Vegas shoot for It Ends With Us. Lively, citing family needs, reportedly skipped multiple filming days. But while the crew waited and budgets burned, she was allegedly spotted enjoying events and relaxing away from set. Meanwhile, fellow cast members were forced to shuffle their own personal commitments to accommodate her absences, an irony not lost on many. What makes this behavior even more striking is the couple's unmatched access to high-end childcare and flexible resources. They could easily balance parenting and work, but instead, sources claim they frequently opt to frame last-minute changes as unavoidable emergencies. It's not about lacking options, said one longtime crew coordinator familiar with the couple. It's about using parenthood as a strategic shield, while the rest of us are left to clean up the mess. Between internal messages, call sheets, and first-hand accounts, a more unsettling portrait is beginning to take shape. The squeaky clean Reynolds Lively brand may be just that, a brand. Behind the curtain, their celebrated family image could be less about authenticity and more about influence control. Artfully maintained to protect their careers while subtly bending the industry to suit their agenda.
Confirm his hatred of baseball and everything else. This is the true shocker right here. So here it is, guys.
Poor guy.
Our fight isn't with
Hey,
you.
when I want your opinion, I'll take Wolverine's your mouth.
That's kid.
Guiltily, that is my daughter,
I'm
Inez.
so sorry we have to admit that.
And I...
You didn't have to admit it. You didn't have to admit it, for one. You could have just kept that a secret, which I probably would have done, and let that come out if the kid wants to admit it later, right? Like, for one. You didn't have to admit it, but he gleefully is about to admit it, and it's worse.
I am Father of the Year over here for allowing her to say such language, which, to her credit, she really didn't want to say, and then came back later and said, I want to say it now, when I started looking at other people to play
Yeah,
it.
but right.
Some other kid's gonna take your part, Inez. You sure you don't want to do Daddy's disgusting line?
To our discredit, we made Nezzy do, I'm not shitting you, 70 to 500 versions of that line.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay for that later.
Blake Lively there as Lady.
Yes, you are.
Dude, but Justin Baldoni's the problem. But a well-connected source close to Taylor tells TMZ, Taylor came to Blake's apartment at the time Blake told her to, not knowing anyone else would be there. In other words, Taylor had no idea there'd be a meeting going on. And I wonder if Taylor knows all this editing nonsense of Blake refusing to let Justin make his movie and I'm not gonna give you Taylor's song. I'm not gonna give you Taylor's song. You mean girl bully. If this is real, Blake Lively, you deserve all of this. This is a reckoning she needs to hear. This isn't bullying. This isn't harassment. This is
While Blake Lively's recurring family emergencies were already raising questions, her sudden bouts of illness during the filming of It Ends With Us have uncovered a pattern that experts now say could shift the entire narrative. According to bombshell revelations from independent investigator Illich, Lively wasn't confined to a hotel room, resting from illness during those pivotal Las Vegas shoot dates. In fact, she was captured front and center, glowing with energy in VIP sections of Taylor Swift's era's tour, laughing, dancing, and clearly not unwell. The evidence is undeniable. On the exact day she claimed to be too sick to report to set, Lively was photographed enjoying herself at a Swift concert. And this wasn't a one-time fluke blamed on a sudden recovery or unfortunate overlap. Investigation uncovered that she attended a total of 7 Taylor Swift shows throughout the film's production, but delays and rescheduling plagued the set due to her repeated absences. To the average observer, a missed day of work might not seem like a big deal, but in filmmaking, it's a logistical nightmare. Entire teams, camera crews, stylists, set decorators, technicians arrive ready to work, only to be dismissed when the lead is unavailable. These aren't millionaires. They're everyday professionals whose livelihoods depend on steady pay. Every hour Lively chose confetti and glow sticks over her scheduled scenes cost the production thousands. Meals had to be prepared, locations had to be paid for, equipment kept running, none of which could be paused at the last minute. Meanwhile, crew members sat waiting, some unsure if they'd even have enough hours on their paychecks to make rent. Each of Lively's unexplained absences left a financial and emotional ripple that worsened with every canceled shoot. What makes this even more disturbing is the glaring disconnect between her reported condition and her actual actions. Social media posts show her glowing, engaging fans, posing backstage at concerts hall on days she told producers she was unfit to work. The contrast between her excuses and the reality is hard to ignore. And then came the childcare defense. One explanation Lively reportedly gave for missing shoot days in Vegas was trouble securing care for her kids. But with a fortune in the tens of millions, that rationale doesn't stand up to scrutiny. She could have flown in a nanny, rented family accommodations, or hired top-tier help on site solutions working-class parents can only dream about. Instead, she appeared to prioritize personal enjoyment over professional commitment. Industry sources suggest this isn't just about a few missed calls. It reflects a broader issue. A pattern where her own preferences consistently came before the obligations outlined in her contract, or those left dealing with the fallout. Weren't fellow celebrities, they were the unseen workforce holding the production together. The timeline tells the story. When Blake was scheduled to be on set, she was too sick. When Taylor Swift was on stage, she was up front, dancing. This wasn't about miscommunication or bad timing, it was about choices. And the ones left footing the bill weren't living in mansions. They were the tireless crew members making the film possible.
That just really shows the manipulation behind Blake. Not only did she steal this movie from Justin in post, which is clear, and took this rough cut, she went to stream it at this book con, and it seems like, judging by this clip, you tell me, even Sony wasn't involved in this. Listen to this.
Brandon hasn't seen it, so we're gonna sit through it.
We just manifested that.
But and just know, it's literally, this is not a bit. It's literally not done. So to be honest, what really happened is we were like, we're gonna show the movie, and the studio was like, no, you're gonna show 20 minutes. So we're like, no, we're gonna show the movie. And they're like, it's not done. And I was like, they don't fucking care. Let's just show them the movie.
Because you're gonna go again, aren't you? You're gonna go watch it in theaters too.
I don't know. Don't you guys care that the movie be finished and that Justin's take be finished? Look at this. Colleen, Brandon, Blake. Where's Justin? Why was Justin not only she's not allowed to be in any of these interviews, but then she's out there stealing hard drives. That's what she did here to go spread the word on this movie.
Twice.
And they were like, it's true. They're like, if everything's not perfect and it's not done, and what if we're going to change things? I was like, these are the people who authored the success of the book. You guys are what matter. And you guys seeing the movie is so important to us. So we're so excited to show you guys.
You brought us so many gifts.
Way to take over, Blake. Literally just took it from him. This movie, this book, you mean, that Justin found first, that Colleen told him to star in, that he oversaw with his production company for all this time, and you just took it over.
Today.
We did. I know. Also, last one, we're going out with a bang. But honestly, you guys, y'all are the only audience in the world that's going to see this cut. It is an early cut.
I'm so fascinated to know which cut this was. Was this Blake's cut? Was anybody in this crowd that saw this cut? Can you please reach out to me, hit me up, or Kim on socials, or you can reach out popcornplanet@gmail. Please don't spam me with other news links. I get plenty of those. But if you're an insider with info,
What began as allegations of professional misconduct has now escalated into something far more. Serious for Blake, lively hard evidence that could unravel her entire narrative. The the carefully constructed story surrounding her harassment claims against Justin Baldoni is rapidly losing ground, thanks to newly submitted court documents that cast her version of events in a troubling light. Baldoni's legal team has introduced a batch of text messages that appear to contradict Lively's accusations, messages that suggest not fear or discomfort, but warmth and familiarity. According to these filings, Lively continued to send Baldoni friendly, even flirtatious messages in the hours and days immediately following the very incidents she now labels as traumatic. Let's rewind. When Lively first accused Baldoni of harassment during the filming of It Ends With Us, the public instinctively rallied behind her. She had the advantage of a respected name, a spotless public persona, and considerable influence in the industry. Baldoni, though well-regarded, was widely expected to be overwhelmed by the pressure. But rather than retreat, he's pushing forward, with a meticulously crafted defense, one that could dramatically change the course of the case. Central to his strategy is a cache of real-time messages, which, if authenticated, could seriously damage Lively's credibility. These texts weren't exchanged weeks or months later. They happened within hours of the alleged incidents. And in them, Lively reportedly comes across as relaxed, upbeat, and entirely at ease with the man she now accuses. Legal observers are calling this a potential turning point, not just a contradiction, but a direct challenge to the heart of her claims. Employment attorney Ron Zambrano, who's following the case closely, has raised deeper concerns. He warns that Lively's actions might represent an abuse of post-mortem legal protections, not a pursuit of justice, but a strategic move to cover internal conflicts that escalated out of her control. That's true, Zambrano says. It sets a troubling precedent, potentially undermining the credibility of future harassment victims. But Baldoni's legal team isn't stopping at exposing inconsistencies. They're also invoking California Civil Code Section 47.1, a powerful but rarely discussed law that could cut Lively's case off at the knees. This statute removes defamation protections from those who knowingly make false harassment allegations. If Baldoni's team proves she filed her claims without reasonable cause, her legal immunity could disappear entirely. What's more, the court filings suggest Lively didn't act alone. Section 47.1 also strips protection from any false statements made by someone acting on the accuser's behalf. A veiled but pointed reference to Ryan Reynolds. Baldoni's attorneys hint that Reynolds may have had a hand in shaping the narrative, especially after the film's initial promotional push received backlash. According to their theory, Lively may have used the allegations as a lever to seize creative control, manipulating the messaging, altering the edit, and dominating publicity efforts in her favor. Legal experts now say that Baldoni's evidence has significantly shifted the tone of the case. Between the messages that undermine the timeline, witnesses from the production set, and the strategic deployment of Section 47.1, Lively's once sturdy position is beginning to look increasingly unstable. What once seemed like a clear-cut victory for her legal team may now turn into a full-blown reckoning. It's one where the spotlight shines just as brightly on the accuser as it does the accused.
Dude, but Justin Baldoni's the problem. It's like I can't get over the hypocrisy. How do you react? You have kids. I have kids. Look, sometimes they say a bad word. It is what it is. We laugh. But I would never want my kids to be talking about sucking some C word of Wolverines in a movie at that age. I do everything I can to protect them from that range of topics, because you want to keep their innocence as long as you can, right? Would you let your kid do that?
The more disgusting part of it is because Ryan was not willing to be as fully honest as Sean Levy was, because Ryan goes to her credit, she didn't want to do it, but then he snitches on himself and says, I pretty much told her I'm gonna give your role to somebody. She said, Daddy, I'll do it. Then Sean Levy says, oh, to our discredit, we made her rehearse that line 70 to 500 is probably an exaggeration. One time is too much. 70 times is disgusting. And then
disgusting.
The carefully curated family man persona surrounding Ryan Reynolds has taken a troubling hit. Just as Justin Baldoni pushes back with hard-hitting legal evidence, A separate controversy involving Reynolds and his own daughter has surfaced, raising serious concerns among parents and industry observers alike. While Reynolds is known for projecting an image of the ultimate doting dad through charming interviews and heartfelt social media posts, off-camera decisions tell a story that is far more troubling. During production on Deadpool and Wolverine, Reynolds made a choice that many now see as shockingly inappropriate. He had his own daughter deliver a sexually suggestive line in the R-rated film. The issue isn't just the nature of the content, it's how Reynolds reportedly pushed his child into performing it. According to director Sean Levy, Reynolds' daughter was clearly uncomfortable and reluctant to say the line. A responsible parent might have stepped in and scrapped the idea. But that's not what happened. Instead, based on Levy's commentary, the child was made to rehearse the line an astonishing 70 to 500 times. Even Levy admitted he found the situation disgusting, yet it continued. Reynolds, by multiple accounts, seemed unbothered, allegedly encouraging the repetition until they got the version they wanted. Consider that for a moment, the same actor who's built his reputation on being a hands-on, protective parent reportedly pressured his child to repeatedly say something sexually inappropriate, all for a film intended for adult audiences that she herself won't be old enough to watch. It's no surprise this revelation has sparked backlash from parenting advocates and concerned viewers alike. They're now asking, what kind of parent would prioritize a film scene over their child's discomfort? For someone who has made family values central to their public image, the disconnect is jarring. Reynolds' entire public identity hinges on being the wholesome, relatable dad. But behind the scenes, he appears to be making choices that completely contradict that narrative. This moment, critics argue, reveals a different Ryan Reynolds, one who may be willing to blur ethical lines when it serves his public persona or advances his professional goals. And this shift fits squarely into the larger claims raised by Baldoni's legal team, who have painted Reynolds and Blake Lively as highly strategic figures willing to bend the rules for power and control. The contrast becomes even more glaring when you consider how carefully Reynolds has shaped his Hollywood identity. He's not just a movie star, he's positioned himself as the ultimate family man, devoted husband to Blake Lively and loving father of their children. His media appearances are filled with lighthearted stories of parenthood, and his social media celebrates family life at every turn. But now, we see a moment on set that suggests something entirely different, him asking his own daughter to repeat adult dialogue dozens, possibly hundreds, of times even as she hesitated. That kind of behavior throws his whole persona into question. The gap between the cheerful father we see in interviews and the man directing a child into saying graphic lines for entertainment is staggering. And when added to the ongoing legal dispute with Baldoni, its new development raises even more questions about what Reynolds and Lively are truly capable of behind the curtain. If he's willing to involve his child in questionable on-set decisions, what might he and Blake be doing to maintain their influence and control across larger projects? It suggests a pattern where image takes priority, and ethical concerns are sidelined in favor of career preservation. Now, the bigger question is whether the industry and the public will continue to buy into the glossy image this power couple has cultivated, as more details trickle out about what's happening beyond the red carpets and interviews. From strategic scheduling tactics to how their children factor into their branding, that once perfect facade appears to be quickly unraveling.
Trying to figure out this 47.1 law. I know you've even looked more into it. It's new.
The reaction is because of how detailed Baldoni's lawsuit with his own versions and the full text message threads and the full transcript of what was going on and these stills, I don't think she has a chance. What was very well argued by Baldoni's attorneys is that there has to be a showing of malice and well, now it's going to go back to her, to Lively. Lively had a reasonable basis for her claim in the first place. That's one. Two, it has to be on the face of his complaint. And what that means is that the judge reading the complaint in this motion has to assume everything that's in it and all those many, many, many pages is true. And then he makes a ruling. So what the judge has to read is go, okay, every single thing, these text messages, these allegations are true. The judge would have to make a determination that somehow she had a good faith, reasonable basis, and I don't think he can do that.
So is Brian's sort of quote legit? Like, do you think this is a massive threat to others? Like, is she trying to play this law, this Me Too law, which we're going to go through more depth, to like actually try and get her way? Do you agree with his urgency?
Yes, I believe she is misusing it, let's call it, in order for a underlying agenda and a fight that she picked that probably.
Beneath the polished collapse of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' public image lies something far more intentional. What industry insiders are now calling a classic case of Hollywood sabotage, and the alleged target is Justin Baldoni. Before, headlines exploded with accusations. Baldoni was riding a major career high. With acclaimed films like 5 Feet Apart and Clouds, he wasn't just a director on the rise, he was emerging as a major creative voice. But in an industry built on clout and carefully managed perception, that rise may have painted a bullseye on his back. The timing of Lively's allegations wasn't just convenient, it was surgical. Just as Baldoni was reportedly closing in on major studio deals and reaching the pinnacle of his momentum, the accusations dropped. The fallout was swift. A year that should have been career-defining turned into a reputational landslide. Insiders argue this wasn't coincidental. It was a strategic strike, executed for maximum impact. By attacking him at his highest point, the blow didn't just hurt, it dismantled everything he had worked to build. At the center of the controversy are none other than Hollywood darlings Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, whose industry sway runs deep. But this wasn't just a personal grievance gone public according to sources. It was a meticulously coordinated takedown. The couple's influence allegedly stretched across agencies, studios, and major streamers, creating a domino effect. The moment accusations surfaced, Baldoni's image was flipped overnight. Once celebrated for his empathetic approach and storytelling finesse, he was suddenly cast as problematic. Calls went unanswered, pitch meetings dried up, projects disappeared. Legal analyst Ron Zambrano points to the volume and detail of evidence coming from Baldoni's side text chains, internal emails, and transcripts as more than just offensive. They suggest a premeditated character assassination. And while some of Lively's claims may find partial shelter under California's legal protections, Reynolds might not be so shielded. Baldoni's legal team is turning its focus toward Reynolds' alleged role behind the curtain, one that isn't protected. It could come with serious legal ramifications. Take the text messages, for example. Industry analysts Andy Senner and Elish dissected them. Highlighting a pattern, Reynolds frequently cited his children to alter production logistics. Not out of urgency, but seemingly to assert dominance. That's not parenting. They say that's control. And when Baldoni refused to accommodate those tactics, the consequences were swift. This case is rapidly becoming more than a personal battle. It's exposing the darker machinery of Hollywood power. A place where major stars, if crossed, can quietly snuff out rising talent by pulling strings behind closed doors. Baldoni's refusal to fall in line, sources say, was met not with negotiation, but with destruction. Years of groundwork disintegrated in weeks. Projects halted. Collaborators vanished. All while Lively and Reynolds continued their public display of heartbreak packaged. Vulnerability wrapped in Instagram charm. But Baldoni's most recent filing cuts straight through that image, it alleges. This wasn't a messy misunderstanding. It was an intentional strike. A high-level move by two influential celebrities to remove someone who challenged their authority. Think David versus Goliath, but instead of stones, the weapons are PR strategies, legal teams, and a Hollywood elite system that protects its own. And with all of this now in the open, the industry is facing a far larger question than just who's right or wrong in one legal fight. It's this. If this is how quickly someone like Baldoni can be buried, who might be next?